Hello, hello, hello,
Hey,
and Happy New Year.
okay. It's been an interesting one to so far. I thought that
It
I
sure
didn't think we
has.
could beat 20, but we are.
No, no, no. We're on a course right now and pace right now to outdo 2020. I think, Donna. I
Okay.
really do.
Well, it's an
Well,
auspicious start.
yes, this is our first show back from the holidays, and we are looking forward this year to continue our quest with being a resource for mothers out there who are trying to combat racism in America, and just provide a resource and an educational platform to discuss issues and just certain things that we're going through as mothers that I think we could only understand because we're mothers. And we're really looking forward to our lineup this season, and really looking forward to really spreading the word, and really getting mothers together to fight this disease. And unfortunately it traveled with us into 2021, and we're here more united than ever to combat it and
Yep.
to really eradicate it.
You
um,
bet.
so welcome back, and we have a very, very special guest with us, Kara Codio. Kara and I have known each other for a very long time. I think since 2006.
Yes.
I think we've known each other, and even prior to that, we've had some mutual friends.
Yes.
So I've known about Kara and her family for a very long time before we actually met in 2006. And I think it's very important to have a perspective from a mother who is Caucasian and is married to an African American and have two biracial kids, and just understanding from her perspective how it's been, being a wife and a mother of who America considers minorities, but we know that that's not so. But just navigating through that, I think there are a lot of mothers out there who are in your position and need a voice, need an example, a role model of how to do it successfully. And you've been very successful at obviously being a great mother to your kids, and obviously a great wife. But not only that, but a businesswoman, a very successful businesswoman. So you've juggled a lot of things, and you've been very successful at it. You had some bumps along the way, which we'll discuss, but this is your platform. This is your opportunity to share your experiences and to really be a voice for, just of support for mothers out there like yourself who are trying to navigate this. So welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, both of you. Appreciate it. It's good to see your face, Dania.
I know it's been a while.
It has.
So we have some questions that obviously these interviews end up just going in all sort of different directions. And the one thing I think Donna could attest to is we were enlightened by our guests every time, right, Donna?
Every time, without doubt. We think we've heard it all, and we have not.
Yes.
We're hearing different perspectives and different insights, and I think that it's really wonderful for us to be able to walk in someone else's shoes for an evening. And so we're ready to walk in yours.
Awesome. I'm excited.
So tell us a little bit more tell our audience, and obviously I know a lot, but tell us a little bit more about Kara Codio.
So, okay, it's funny because when you said tell us about you, I'm like, immediately I start talking about my family, right? Because that's where we're at in our lives. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm, for work, I'm a adjunct marketing professor, and I'm marketing director. But, primarily, I'm a mom. I have a 16-year-old daughter, 14-year-old son. They both play basketball. My son plays baseball as well. We are from New York, but we live in Florida now. We've been here for, I think, almost 6 years now. It's been a while. My husband and I have been together for like 25 years. We've been married almost 20. And, that's how, Dania and I got to know each other. My husband coached with Dania at Northeastern. And so, I've known her kids since they were little as well. So, not quite as young as mine, but I've known them for a while. So, we're in Florida now, and I will say that's a very, very different environment from what we're used to. And I think, the last 4 years living down here has also been a real different experience than if we lived in New York too. So, being where we are right now is kind of interesting. But we're happy. The kids are good. My daughter is she committed early to the University of Wisconsin for basketball. She's going to be a senior, but she, she's already got where she's going to college, and my son is waiting for his growth spurt still, but he'll get there.
Okay.
Because Manj is pretty. Your husband's pretty tall, right? How tall
Yes,
is
and my
Manj?
daughter's almost 6'1". Manj is like 6'4", 6'5" on a good day. So he'll get there. It's just, he's young for his age. So he's just waiting on that. But he's starting varsity right now, and he's doing good.
And you played college basketball with your husband. So you guys were college sweethearts.
We are. Yeah, we met in college. My former college coach is now the coach at Seton Hall. And Manj and I met, in Long Island in college, both playing. So, so we're a basketball family.
Now, how was it back then when you guys first met? Obviously, in New York, you've already stated, New York is a little bit more diverse in terms of interracial couples, and obviously compared to some other places. But how was it when you first met him? What were you thinking your future would be like in terms of?
Yeah, it's funny. College is a bubble, right? So it's there was really no issues in college, and you're idealistic, and you're not thinking about it, and you're in college, so you're in your own little bubble. I do remember my mom when we got married. My parents both of our parents share the same values and brought us up the same way, so that was never, they were very happy. But I remember my mother saying at one point, when you have kids, things are they're going to have a different experience than you did, just kind of like, and I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, what do you, they didn't really think about it, but it was just kind of an acknowledgement of this, world is not, what you've always experienced. So, I just remember her saying that. I don't think I really gave it any thought, honestly, probably until this past year or two. But he and I really never experienced anything that I would say is out of the ordinary. He would probably say differently, right? And I think that's me not noticing things, where he probably would have.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in terms of as a couple, you didn't deal with a lot of racism. Is that what you're saying?
I don't think we did. I really don't think we did. I mean, our families were never an issue. We could come from good families. But again, that's, the quarantine gave us a lot of time to talk about stuff. We've been together for 25 years. And, we talked about things that I had never really even heard him say, about this stuff. And, one of them is, I'm saying that there was no issues, but, he was a lot of times the only Black person at my house or at a lot of things we did. So there were no issues, but, he noticed that. And, he just, sure, Dane, you've been in those situations, you're used to being the only Black person in a restaurant or in somewhere else. And you just, it is what it is.
Right.
Things that I may not have noticed could have been uncomfortable, for him. So I wouldn't say it was racism, but it was a different experience on his end,
But how about you though? How about you? Did you have any kinds of experience? Were you the only white person?
Yeah, I mean, there were times because of basketball too, where we went to a gym in Manhattan one time where he was playing after semi-pro, and I remember leaving and I was like, I was the only white person in that gym, and he was like, hey, welcome to my life, I noticed it, but he was like, this happens all the time to me. So there were times, and obviously his family is Black, but with his family, I never really thought about it. But, I think it was more on his end. I think it was more on his end that he had those experiences more than I did.
Okay.
So there's two things, just real quick. There were two things that you mentioned that we've actually had conversations with previous guests about. And I think it pretty much made your relationship kind of easier, and you really didn't see the differences more so because two things. One is basketball. Basketball has a way of really allowing people of all different races to get together on the same team and for the same goal, which is winning. So, even with our teams, they were very diverse. You had, Black kids, white kids, all needing to kind of put their differences aside for the sake of winning and being a team, right? So I think the fact that you guys were always around basketball and always around people of different races, that it wasn't anything new to be in an arena, in an atmosphere where you were either the only one, right?
Absolutely.
And the second thing you mentioned that I think was great, and a lot of people don't know, Manj is Haitian.
Mm-hmm.
His mom and dad are Haitian.
They came to New York or to America when they were in their 30s. So his whole family's from Haiti.
Right. So I think when you've migrated to America and you haven't been part of the Jim Crow era, and
Yep.
your ancestry hasn't really been exposed to much of the racism and oppression that was there in the 50s and the 60s. Because I think my parents came over in the 70s. I'm sure
Yep.
his parents came over around that time. We kind of didn't get exposed to the racism. And in our culture, everyone was black. Everyone's black in Haiti. Everyone's black in St. Lucia. So we're not coming to America with I'm different because I'm black. We're
Right.
coming here to be hard workers, right? And to kind of fend for our family. So I think that the combination of the basketball family and being, immigrants coming to America and coming from a place that we didn't experience racism. We had no idea what racism was, correct? Would you agree with those?
God, you're 100% right. I mean, the basketball thing is definitely, from my perspective, I agree with that. And the Monj, and I don't want to expose myself as being too ignorant, growing up. But, when we were dating, I remember he would say this to me many times. He was like, Kara, black people are not all the same. My parents are not from here, and there's just a different mentality. And it's not right or wrong. It's just different based on what their experience was, And so he was raised differently than, say, someone whose, grandmother, was, in the Jim Crow era. So it's very different. So his parents and his family, absolutely, it was different. So we had more of, we meshed, easier, I think, because of, like you said, both of those things. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you got married and had some children.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And then, basketball kind of took over our lives. Manj, and we actually coached together briefly. That was fun. I wish there were videos of that. So he was, the head coach. I was the assistant coach. We did it at Codio College in New York. We did it for a couple of years. And then I had my daughter, and he was offered that was a part-time, job. You did that on top of your real job. And then he got offered a assistant coaching position at Iona College with my old coach. He did that for 1 year, and then Dania offered him to work with her at Northeastern. So we moved up north to Providence and Boston area. And that was, it was a really fun experience living in, in a little bit different part of the Northeast. But my mother passed away in the middle of that. So it kind of just changed, everything we were planning. So we ended up moving back to New York before we really wanted to. And so he got away from coaching at that point, which I'm pretty sure he regrets to this day. But, like life happens. And so we moved back to New York, and we were there for a while. And then my husband was offered kind of a changing career path slightly. And we moved out to the Midwest about 6 years ago, right before here. And we lived in southern Wisconsin for 1 year. And he got transferred down here, but it was a really, you look back at your path, right, and how you end up. And it was just a really good experience to live in the Midwest, to meet different people. The connection we made to Wisconsin, obviously my daughter is now going to go there to college. So, it really was a really, I guess, formative 12 months, that we had there. And then we've been in Florida, ever since. So.
And
how was the? Yeah, I actually was asking the same thing, Donna. But I was back to Wisconsin. In terms of being an interracial couple, obviously you went from New York to Massachusetts to now Wisconsin, and different places. And you obviously said you didn't really pay attention to it much, or didn't really notice it much. But was there ever a point where you were like, yeah, we're in a different place. This is definitely different. And
I think, and I give Manj credit for this, because everywhere we have ever lived, and we were very open about it, but we always lived in a town in every state that is as diverse a town as we could find. For our kids. So when we first got married, we lived in Jamaica Estates in Queens, which was, just a great place. We moved to a town called Valley Cottage, which is by Nyack in New York, which is a really, progressive, diverse, part of Rockland County. When we moved to Providence, is obviously, it's a city. When we went to Wisconsin, he went out there and he worked in Illinois, but we did not find a place that we were comfortable with in Illinois. It was a different kind of vibe. So he found a town that was on the border. It was called Beloit. And we, to this day, 6 years later, have extremely close friends there. It's a very diverse town for the Midwest. Very progressive, blue kind of town. And and then we came down here. So up until now, we've really tried to be very cognizant to make sure our kids are going to a school that's diverse. And down here we did the same thing. I mean, Jupiter for Florida has very good schools. The public schools that our kids went to down here, again, very diverse. What I found though was the word diversity down here means a little different, right? Like there is a good percentage of minority, Black kids or students of color, but it's more of it's a little bit more separate than it would be up north, like they just, it's just a little different. There's maybe less, I don't know, middle to upper middle class, maybe they've been here generations. So it is a little bit different, and that's taken us a little while to kind of feel that out, because where we've always been, it's always been a lot of interracial couples and a lot of, people at the same, just kind of the same career path type thing. So down here, it's right. Different. It's definitely different. My kids, especially my son, because he's a boy, it's different for girls. And my son is, he's noticed things down here. Definitely. He has. And, that's been challenging. And I do think the last 4 years have magnified it a lot. So.
Okay. So, you're kind of skirting around what kind of things?
I don't know. I mean, I'll say this. Our kids are, my husband is very, and I was, going to talk about this later. My husband is very much like, listen, things happen to you when you're Black throughout your life on a day-to-day basis, subtle, not subtle, racism. And so you don't fight every single battle, right? Or you'll be doing it your entire life. Okay. So, he's always, something will happen and I'm like, oh my God, someone will say something, and something, call right. Someone a thug, and that, I get like crazy. And my husband's like, you can't fight every battle. And I said, well, you're right. But just because, you didn't want to, maybe there's something that crosses the line for them. And, they need to be able to stop, say, I'm not, this is, I don't want to deal with this. So I think living down here, that has been, part of it. There's been a lot of, Trump comments and, Trump's good for Black people, those kinds of things. For a white person to say that anyone's good for Black people, I think is a little, presumptuous. So, I mean, my son has, he's very much, he'll tell you what he thinks and, that kind of thing. But I'm sure it happens up north too. I just think down here, there's more of a comfort level,
Mm-hmm. Very much so.
So, okay. So a comfort level, meaning, it is a more conservative community?
Yeah, it's way more conservative than I thought. And, I really, especially in the political climate, I hate even using the word conservative because I feel like none of this is really conservative values. You know what I mean? It's a whole nother level, right? It's, the racism and all that really is not a conservative political value, right? I know they say that. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's just a more comfort level of, and Dana, I'm sure you've gotten this, your daughter speaks so well, like she's
yeah.
so well, I mean, my husband got that as well, and, I, for a long
she's
time,
from planet Mars.
Yeah. I'm like, she talks white, I mean, those kinds of things that my husband got in Long Island too, in New York, but, down here, I think it's just a lack of not getting it. Not understanding that is not a compliment,
Right. Okay. So this brings us to a point that this is something we talk about all the time, that how many white people I know that do not believe they're racist.
Yes.
And we had a whole show on just like racist terminology and racist comments that, sail over people's heads. That they're just not in tune. Even Daniel and I were like, hey, did you know where the origin of that comes from?
Yeah.
So it was a very enlightening show for us. But that's a very common, I mean, I know many people who say, I'm not racist. Right. And I don't think, and the same person will say, and Donald Trump isn't a racist, or so-and-so isn't a racist. And so I do a lot of listening. And I choose, I pick and choose my battles also.
Yeah, and I think, as adults, like you learn to, right? You have to. You can't fight every single battle. Right. I mean, I think my biggest thing that I kept saying to my husband and trying to, get him to understand from a white person's perspective. To me, listen, it's okay for white people to not understand the Black experience. Like, we don't understand it. We haven't lived it, right? But you have to acknowledge that. And that's, to me,
that's it.
Yeah, and white people are so defensive. They get very defensive, when you say something sounds racist or white privilege, it triggers them, and it's, well, my life was hard too. Yes, no one's saying it wasn't, that's not what it's about, but it's been different, so I think acknowledging is the first thing. You can just say, maybe I don't get it, but it doesn't mean it's not real. Right.
Well, that's right. Right. But this is why we're having these conversations, because you as a mother of, of two children, interracial children, you've had a different experience than I have as a mother.
Right.
Okay. And I think that when you can talk about, this is my experience, and, most of us are mother bears, and, you say something offensive and it's like, hey, what are you doing? And for you, I think you've had a different experience, and this is the experience that we want to hear about, and others need to hear about.
And you're right, and that's I've had throughout these. Well, I've had people. Let's say after, the George Floyd or Ahmaud Arbery. That one, because he was jogging around his neighborhood, right, which my husband does, and my kid, that one hit home. There's certain things. There was, I forget. The kid's name who was arrested on his way to basketball practice, because someone said he didn't look, and that one that's my son, right? And I remember trying to talk to cousins and aunts and uncles and family members, and they're like, "What do you mean that could be Cam? What do you mean? That could be Cam. I know you don't look at Cam as that, but that could be him." And it was just a complete not even sailing over their head, like that could be, my cousin. And my brother and I have had a lot of conversations about it, and he says, Carrie, our life growing up was just not the same as your kids. It's just not. So, we have to parent them differently. And the good thing, in terms of people understanding is that my brother and his sister-in-law, they parent their kids differently because of my kids, and my husband, a lot of people, another one of my favorites is, we teach our kids, we don't see color, and okay, I mean, that's only white people can say that, right?
Yeah, but it's a lie. It's a lie.
Of course, you see color. You can teach them that it shouldn't matter,
right? But to celebrate it,
But like my sister-in-law, was talking to my I think they're 7. They're twins, and she said to them, she's trying to talk about, Jordy and Cam, and they said, well, why would someone treat them differently? She goes, well, they shouldn't, but they do, and that's reality, And to me, acknowledging that is such a big first step, and if you can't acknowledge that, it's really hard to go to the next step, which is, to empathize with people who don't look like you,
Right. Well, there's two things you could do. You could either completely shelter them from the reality that's out there in America and try to protect them as a mama bear as much as possible, or you could expose them to the truth, expose them to the reality, because they're not always going to be in your care. They're not always going to be in your shadow. They're going to have to go out there. And when they go out there, it's going to be their color, unfortunately, that most people see first and will judge them by. So I think the fact that you're exposing your children to the reality of America and the ugliness of America, so they're prepared. And I know I think I saw on Facebook that you guys marched in one of the Black Lives Matter
on my son's 14th birthday. Yes.
Yes, and you were interviewed by the news, I believe, right? So you have done a great job of not sheltering them from what happened, and I think mothers like you with biracial children need to hear that you should not shelter your children. You should allow them to be exposed and to make their own perceptions about what is out there, and in hopes that it'll help navigate them through.
Because it's like you said, it's reality, like, right? I mean, it is, and I mean, this is what it is. And as much as you want to shelter your kids from everything, and any kind of harm that comes to them in general, that's not going to be their life. It's not going to be their life. And I don't know, like, remember somebody also said to me, oh, they shouldn't have to deal with this right now. They're so young. And my husband just was like, I was like, I got it. And he goes, what do you mean? This is them. This is not new to them. This is not going to be, of course they shouldn't have to, but they do, and when I don't want them to be 19 in college and have their, oh my God, like people, so it is reality. And sadly, it's been in their face for, 5, or so years. So it's kind of been, can't, but Yeah, I mean, it's, the other thing too is I think that kids have to learn, like, they're going to be confident to stand up for themselves when they have their own self-worth, right? And that doesn't even just come from me telling them how great they are, right? We all tell our kids how great they are. It's from them working for things and standing up for themselves, on their own, and working hard and achieving things by themselves. So then they can say, well, I'm here because I deserve to be here, and I've earned this. And it's not just my mommy called the teacher and said, I deserve, you know what I mean? So I think the self-worth is important for them, and how hard they work to get to where they're at. I think that helps a lot.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
So as a mother, can you tell us about some experiences you've had that have been challenging or?
Sure. Sure. So, I mean, this year we had a very specific situation. There was something that happened in an online class at my kid's school that they were made aware of. Someone made a racial comment in an online class, along with a bunch of Trump comments. And so my daughter's teammate was in there. She was very upset. She told my daughter, she told, a lot of people, and they were all very upset. Because my daughter said it could have been me. They're talking about me. So
Now your daughter's teammate is Black?
She's biracial as well.
Okay, cool. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. And so my daughter took it upon herself to contact the school administration, tell them what happened, which they had obviously been also made aware by other people. But, I wanted her to feel like she should, can talk to them. Right. She told them what happened. She told them she was uncomfortable with the fact that people thought it was okay to do this in the culture, in a school culture, right? This can happen on the street. It can happen in a store. It should not happen in a school. Right. We went back and forth with them. They ended up investigating it. The girls were not satisfied with how they felt it was being handled. So they wanted to wear, Jordana and her teammate wore Black Lives Matter shirts before a game to warm up. And they just thought in their mind, it was very important because they were making a statement based on the whole culture, but also what had happened in the school. They wore the shirts. It was fine. Nothing happened. The rest of the girls, most of the girls wanted to wear them as well. They planned to wear them. The athletic department found out they were going to wear them. And the next thing we know, we had a couple games canceled. And, the school said there was for other reasons. We believe it was because of the shirts, and it became a really big deal. And I was saying to you earlier, as athletes in general, taking something away that a kid and an athlete cares about that much and has worked that hard for, is very hurtful for them, especially in this past year with what every kid and athlete has had to deal with the the pandemic. It's been hard. So. It's been a platform.
It's been a platform that's been really great.
So it turned into, them being able to really stand up for themselves and say, listen, we don't feel that, we feel like we're sticking up we're on the right side of this, and we're not going to back down because we feel like we're on the right side. So I think it's empowering, to feel like you can speak out on yourself and your friends and people you care about. And, she's had a lot. I mean, I can't tell you that. When you talk about basketball being its own little kind of bubble, I mean, I can't tell you the support, I mean, it's been really good. And people who say, we felt this too. We couldn't say anything, and so I think that makes her feel like, that they're speaking up for other people, as well.
Right. Excellent. It's funny because, we talk about sports and athletes having that platform for, to raise issues of social injustice and how we feel we're being treated and how enough's enough. And we're using that platform. And, it's happening all over. And I'm happy it's happening in with your daughter and in her high school. But obviously it's been happening in college and in the pros. And obviously there's some backlash to it all. But, once we're united in saying enough's enough and we stand together, I think you do have that support group out there now for that kind of stance, which is great. But on the flip side of that, and this is something that also has been brought to my attention, and just so you know, it's not only your daughter that's getting this backlash, but there are student athletes now who, because of their position and because of their stance, are now getting, not getting enough playing time. Now that the school and the coaches are now doing things to punish these student athletes for having the voice, and that's not being heard. That's not being exposed, you know. So
wow. And that's a great example. I mean, our games being canceled, like I said, you know, we believe that was backlash for that. And luckily and thankfully, my daughter's coach is on the right side as well, and he's very, very supportive of them. Thank God, you know, thank God. If he wasn't, you know, I don't know, you know. So
exactly.
You know, that at least they have an adult in the situation other than their parents who is also, you know, trying to tell, you know, you're doing the right thing, you know. So that is really, really helpful too. I can't imagine a kid in a situation like that where their coach is telling them, you know.
I mean, the ADs and the coaches are doing the right thing. They're putting out the statements. We're all for it, you know.
A lot of good words.
But behind the scenes, they're really destroying the you know, the activism, the feeling of I need to stand up for my people. I need to stand up for myself and my peers and say this isn't right. Right.
Yes.
You have to walk the talk.
That's the thing. There's a lot of, you know, there was a lot of statements put out back in June, you know, a lot of emails from schools and a lot of, you know, different things and companies, and, you know, it all sounded really good. Right. But then the time comes where you now have to, like you said, back it up. Like, do we really believe in what we just said, that we stand behind our students of color and we stand behind, you know, our customers and all that? Or do you, you know, back down and say, well, this is political? And, you know, to me, these are three words that form a sentence that if you don't believe in what these three words mean, then we have a difference. You know, it's not political. I don't think it's a very simple sentence.
Right. And for instance, a reaction some white people have are, well, blue lives matter, all lives matter. And so they're missing, there's a disconnect there between the empathy.
That's, you know, and that's absolutely. I mean, so listen, I mean, my grandfather was a police officer, and, you know, I don't think there's anyone that does not appreciate what police officers do, but there are no blue lives, right? I mean, that's a career choice. It is not the color of your skin. So that's, you know, it's not comparable.
Oh, see, there's a good insight. That's something
new. I like it.
So, you know, that's like a number one. Like you said, the empathy part is something. And and think about it. I mean, anyone can watch, you know, what happened at the Capitol and empathize with those police officers and how scared they were, right? I mean, that's empathy. But the problem with empathy is that it tends to be with people that look like you, right? So like a white teenager does something and he needs help and he looks like my son. You just have a feeling for the kid because he looks like your son, you know, and a black teenager just doesn't look like your kid. So you just, you know, you just don't think the same way. And I think that's human nature. I think it has to be like white people need to step up and they need to say, okay, this kid is like my kid. He might not look like him, but it's the same thing, you know, instead of looking at a black teenager and saying, you know, oh, he's probably going to end up doing something 5 years down the road. So glad we got him now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know, our whole point was that this is everyone's child. When a child is hurt, it's everyone's child.
It should be. Yep.
Right. And so that was what we were trying to, you know, when Dania and I first decided to go forward with this, we all heard George Floyd cry for his mother. That's every mother.
And I think a lot of white moms felt that. And that was almost the first time, right? Like almost the first time people were like, oh God, you know, and you know, that's important. It has to be. And, you know, my husband always says, if I'm, you know, one of the only black people like that you spend a lot of time with, that's a problem because you're going to have a hard time, you know, understanding or empathizing, you know, with black people. So, you know, part of it is kind of broadening your life experience, you know, and getting to know different people and asking questions and understanding. And, you know, Trayvon Martin, I mean, that was kind of when the Black Lives Matter started. And that was just thinking about it makes me sick to my stomach, right? Because it could have been any one of our kids. And
Right.
Well, white people don't think that way because it's probably not going to be one of their kids, you know, and they need to, that's what they need to grasp, you know?
Yeah. See, it's funny because we talk about generational racism versus systemic racism. And obviously both exist. But in watching the thousands of protesters, I'll be correct for right now, that stormed the Capitol and looking out at a sea of Trump flags and Confederate flags and all that madness. Do you know what I felt most sorry for? I felt sorry for their children because we can't save them. It's too late to save them, right? But their children are the ones who are going to continue to perpetrate that sort of racism and stance.
Yep.
Now, how do we, as mothers, with our platform, break that chain? Because it's going to continue for every person that was out there. There's a child at home somewhere that was watching, knew that how their parents feel about the political climate, about the social injustice, about Black people, about brown people. They know. So now their children are watching their parents and taking notes and going to probably follow in their footsteps, most likely. So for all those thousands of people that were out there, could you imagine if every one of them had a child?
Oh God,
that's going to be very difficult. How do we end this racism?
Well, first of all, I think that there's going to be serious consequences for those people that did this.
I sure hope so.
As a child watching your parent be arrested and go to jail or go on trial for these crimes, I think that says something too.
Consequences are important. I think you're right. I think that's why all of this it has to happen. You can't say there is no healing without accountability. Somebody said that online. You can't heal and unite unless there's accountability, consequences, and systems put in place for this to never happen again. And you're right. Consequences, I think, like when you raise a kid, right? If there's no consequences, they keep doing stuff. So I think that's a really good point, Donna. And Dana, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. My husband always says, and I'm not trying to constantly quote him, but he's Black and I'm not. So he has way more, understanding of everything. But he would also say, he said, listen, Karen, Black people have to be twice as good. Okay, this, affirmative action, someone got this job for that's not real. Black people have to be twice as good. If you look at President Obama compared to President Trump, compared to anybody, okay, you have to be twice as good, right? So I feel like, Black people are raising their kids, their way of kind of fighting it is to just be as successful as they can,
That's right?
And to, raise their kids to have that mentality. But I don't know in terms of these other people. I do know, my kids have had, he had a friend good friend from down here, a good friend. And he was walking around with a MAGA hat on one day, last summer. And I told my son was just like, what do I do? And I said, I don't know, but I don't know how you could really kind of have that kid, he clearly doesn't get it, but I don't know. I think them having a voice and saying how they feel could maybe have a little bit of impact. But I just don't know if those kids stay in the same environment and they don't ever move out of it,
And that's my point. It wasn't about the people that were out there. It was about the children that were at home that have to be under that household with such hatred and such biased feelings about people that are different from them.
Right.
And, that whole, like you said, it wasn't politics. It was about white supremacy. It was about making sure they maintain power. Because it's been so long that they have had the power. They want to make sure they maintain it. And the little things that are happening now to bring awareness to these social injustices, they feel like they're losing their power.
Yes.
It's okay.
They have to keep people in their place. Know your place, know where you're supposed to be. We're supposed to be here. We don't care what you do as long as you stay,
Yeah, it's not about Republican versus Democrat.
Yep.
But there's something else there with white supremacists and that whole group. They are extraordinarily disenfranchised. They do not fit into mainstream America either.
And they need someone to blame for that, I think.
Got it. And Donald Trump gave them the vehicle to jump on board. And you belong with me.
Right. I think you're right.
Here's your home.
Yeah, you're right. And they, they need, people who are unhappy with their lives or, aren't successful as they expect to be, they're miserable and they need to find someone whose fault it is. And most people, I don't think, go to that place, right? But there is this group in this country that he has resurrected and pulled out of their parents' basements and, and the internet. And now you have a voice and now and having a Black man become president was a trigger. It was a huge trigger.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
So when we talk about what can we do, it's about reaching those very children that you're talking about, Dania, and giving them a place at the table that's not crazy. That's a nice place to be. I think it's reaching those children in a different way.
And hopefully with social media, as bad as it can be for some, these kids are now being exposed to things that they probably wouldn't be exposed to if if they were only witnessing what's in their household. Now they're seeing different people of different cultures in different places. Now there's a Black vice president-elect. You know, there's the music that they're female. There's music that they're now exposed to that's different from what their parents would probably play in the house. You know, the diversity may not be in their home. Obviously, we know that, but because of social media, they're now seeing a world that they probably would not have been exposed to otherwise. I think maybe when we people of our age, maybe an older generation, we didn't have exposure to anything outside of our homes or outside of our community, right? But now with the internet, these kids are seeing things that are different from them, and maybe having empathy for people who are now their online friends, or you know, different social, you know. So
that's right.
I'm trying to answer my question.
Yeah. I think that's a good point.
Kids who are, and then
one of the positives of, you know, of the social media. But I think you're right. They are exposed to a lot of stuff, and maybe that, and in a good way, right? Like you said, they're online friends. They follow all these people, and they see different things, and it's like, that's not what my dad said, you know? That's right.
And it was funny because I don't know if you guys saw this, but there was a lady who got punched in the face by a police officer during the riot. Did you guys see that? A security guard punched her in the face, and her daughter outed her and said, "Mom, you remember you told me don't go to that Black Lives Matter march because it might be violent? Well, this is what look what happened to you." You know?
My daughter's, it was on TikTok, so yeah.
But you know, these kids, I'm hopeful now. These kids get it. They see that
they're way better.
Mom and dad,
they're better than us. I think the millennials, even, you know, and the younger generation, I just think they're whenever I hear, you know, this, you know, oh, kids these days, I'm like, you are not talking to the right kids, because these kids, and I mean, you know, Terrence, how old? Terrence is in his 20s, right?
24.
So that's kind of the millennials, right? I mean, when I say kids, I include them because I'm old now, right?
Yes, definitely.
They are just, they give me hope. I mean, they are just so much like, they're empowered. They don't want to take things. And this is off topic, but Dania, I think you might kind of get what I'm saying. You know, there's also, even in like sports, there's a lot of complaints about kids transferring too much and things like that, which there's obviously issues with that. But I think a part of it is that this generation realizes at some point, like, you know what? There could be something better for me, you know, and I don't have to stay in the same situation if it's not working for me, you know, and I think that's part of it. You know, these kids know there could always be something better. And, you know, our parents stayed in the same job for 30 years, you know, and they got a lot out of it. You know what I mean? Like, so I think this generation is always looking for something better for themselves. And I think that's a good thing, you know?
Well, what I like about this generation is that if you looked at those protests all over the summer, what did you see? You saw all different kinds of young people standing together. And that was really beautiful.
Yes.
You know, so when I hear people comparing the Black Lives Matter protests with what happened in the Capitol, I'm like, whoa, you're watching something different than me.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. I mean, you can't compare it. And listen, I mean, there's always going to be, you know, people that do something they shouldn't. I think the unrest has been necessary. I think, you know, sometimes you need to get people's attention, you know, and I think it's been necessary. There's going to be people that take things too far. But what happened this summer, and people standing up for, you know, what they think is you know, injustice and their lives, is not the same thing as being mad that one person lost an election. You know, that's just not,
and we're going to overthrow the government because of it.
And I mean, I mean, it's just there is no comparison. And I find it hard to have a discussion with someone who makes that comparison, you know, and I'm trying to not like be that person that just walks away, because that's not helping, right, either. But you know, I'm hopeful that maybe this had to happen for a lot of people to see, you know, what's going on. You know, I'm trying to find like a silver lining in that, you know.
Oh, there are going to be a lot of silver linings because we're talking about it. We're talking about it. Different people have had to make very hard stands that are extraordinarily difficult for them right now, and they're making them, and I'm so proud of them. People that I didn't expect are having to say no more, you know. So there are lots of silver linings. You know, and unfortunately, you know, how many people died because of this?
Well, right. That's that people shouldn't have to die for it, but
right.
Black people have been dying for this for a very long time.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen.
Right. I don't like to see anyone die because so unnecessarily.
Right. Always.
Because all those people that died had mothers too.
And right. And families. And, it's just, it's never, and to die for, that, I mean, it's never.
Right. Or when I saw that young man being crushed, in that doorway.
Yes.
And that someone reaching up underneath his mask and trying to scratch his eyes.
Right. Instead of trying to help him.
I didn't look at that as a police officer. It looked like a young man in horrible trouble.
He looked like a kid, I mean, he can't breathe. How do you not help him? Yeah.
And that's the whole point. As mothers, we have to be, I guess, better than this because we're the ones who have to stand up and say, this doesn't work for us anymore. No more. We don't want any child to die unnecessarily.
And I think maybe that's also an answer for what Dana said is that, maybe mothers, who are the ones who, you do tend to be the most empathetic because, your heart lives outside your body, right? I mean, when they walk around. So, mothers, I think, in general can hopefully just kind of see, and try to say, to not teach their kids hate, right? Start with that, and let them kind of form their own relationships and opinions and to at least not start them with hate.
And what else do you do? Do you introduce, for me, in my house, I grew up in extraordinarily diverse, no one grew up like me. I grew up in such a diverse atmosphere that it was wonderful. So for me, I lived a very different life, but I don't think it's the average life in the United States.
Right.
So how do we do better?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't grow up in a diverse town. I grew up in a small little town in New Jersey, but my parents were from the Bronx, so I grew up in a small white town with literally one black family. But my parents weren't from that. So what they taught us, was different, so I at least had, even though it wasn't, and I went to high school and I had more of an experience. But, so I was at least taught the right way, even if I didn't live it. So, I don't know. I think education is important. I think, going to schools where there are kids that are all, different is important. To be exposed, just to be exposed to different kinds of people and, different kinds of black people, right? Not, like you said, not just maybe, immigrants as well. And, people who have different kinds. So, like I said, not all white people are the same, but, same with the black people. And I think that there needs to be more exposure. I think, parents, it's important to, if you can, try to raise your kids in areas where there is more diversity.
Right. Definitely. Well, this has definitely been a great conversation.
No, I told you I could talk.
This has been great. And we could only pray that when Jordana and Cameron grow up, they don't have to worry about living in a diverse area. They don't have to worry about, some of the things that you and Monj have to worry about for them, for their sake and their safety. We hope, and we could only continue to do what we're doing, have these conversations and enlighten those who think differently and empower those who are looking for answers on how to do it. And I think you gave a lot of answers, being an interracial couple with biracial children on how to do it the right way, and I think the one thing you said that was real is empower your children to make the right decision. Don't shelter them, expose them to everything, empower them, make them work hard for the things that they get. And they earn. And I thought that was great because a lot of mothers aren't doing it that way. And rightly so, maybe because of fear, maybe because of whatever. But
you get it, but it's important. And I think, and I know we're wrapping up, sorry, but, and I think there's a lot of trauma that Black people have been experienced their whole lives that's kind of coming back out now, right? Because now it's all coming out. And I think part of the trauma is not being able to express it when it happens, So I think a lot of the kids being able to talk about it now and say it's not going to be there on their shoulders 20 years from now, Yes.
Amen to that.
Simulating it,
Yes. Build up. Very true. Okay. Well, this is great. Again, thank you, Karen. And send my love to the family.
You too. Tell the boys we miss them.
I sure will. And hopefully we'll see you guys soon with this. when COVID ends, we'll probably come back out there and hang out again and have some fun.
For sure. Thank you guys so much.
I'm coming.
Yes,
Deb said, Donna says she's coming now too. So
she's in. Thank you guys. It's so great that you're doing this. So great. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll continue to fight. We'll continue to do what we can as mothers. But it's been great and very enlightening. You shared some really great things with us tonight, and I'm sure our audience would love everything that you said. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We'll send you a shirt.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we'll send you a shirt. We'll send you a shirt so you can wear it.
I want one.
All right. Take care.
Thanks,
All right. Thank you. Good night.
Bye-bye.